Okay. All right, so now we're going to do the lab portion of the course where we talk about implementing this in Leaflet. Okay, what I've done is, actually before I do that, so I showed you this, right? This, the problem with this is that it's not in latitude, longitude, and Leaflet expects the JSON to be in latitude, longitude. We can change that by just saying, you don't have to actually type this in, SRS, it's code, and then equals EPSG 3857, or actually not 3857, we need 4326. It must not be exactly right, but hold on here a second. I can find out if I go to web mapping course and I download. So I put this up there. Just refresh this page. You'll see that I added a starting point. This leaflet week 10. So save that as, I'm going to put it in my WM folder. Hit save, and I'm going to show it. I'm going to open it up in Notepad. All right. SRS name, not SRS code, sorry. Okay. So while you're opening that, I'll show you that if we add SRS name equals EPSG colon 4326. Watch the coordinates change. Right now they're in meters. I click that again. Now they're in latitude, longitude. See those numbers? Are in latitude, longitude for the interstates. Hold on here a second. Okay. So, oh yeah, I already opened that. So I'll go back to Notepad now. So in Notepad, I've added this text right here. This is kind of like a stub text for getting these features in. I had to kind of move it over just a little bit, like that. Sure. Tell me when it's good. Good? Okay. All right, so what this looks like on here, if I go to, if I open this up in a web browser, open with Chrome, move this over a little bit. This doesn't look a whole lot different than last week. It's got, I did eliminate one of the overlay layers, okay? So right now it's just got the weather, and you can switch it back and forth between topographic and streets. Certainly, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Right. I mean, that's how we all, that's really how we learn programming stuff is finding resources online. Yep. Of course, okay. So, going back to this is the code that I added for this week. All right, and this code basically reads in JSON that's stored on some other computer in some other place. We actually used code kind of similar to this when we did the earthquakes lab. Okay, so this isn't a totally new material, but I did do a few different things. First of all, I set up a variable that's just the root URL. Okay. This is the root URL is the URL to the geo server before we add any parameters. I'll show you what I mean by that. Going back over to here. I thought I had this open already, but it doesn't look like I do. So I'll go to WMS, geo server, and I'll go to layers, and I'll go to, so right now I'm in, I should probably have used interstates, but I didn't, just because this was the one that was up on my desk. We'll change it to, here it is, right here. So this is the, if I want to look at this layer, sorry, I go to layer preview, that's what I meant to do. If I want to look at this layer, and I go to JSON-P, so this part of the URL, the base, everything before this question mark, is what I put in here. Okay. Then these things are everything after the question mark. They get put into the URL like this. So we have, on this screen, we have service : WFS. That gets turned into service equals WFS. Version equals 1.0.0 gets turned into, version : 1.0.0 gets turned into version 1.1, and so on. So in other words, all of these parameters are what's needed to build the request. Okay? In other words, we want this big URL, and this is a more organized way of doing that. So we're putting in the service, the version, the request is to get the features instead of getting a map. The type name sounds kind of weird, but that's actually the name of the layer. Then this says, we can limit the number of features that come back, the maximum features, we're saying 200. We could change that to 2,000, whatever. The output format is the format that we're going to get the response in, and that needs to be text JavaScript. The next one also just needs to be what it is. It's callback : get JSON. And then finally, the SRS name allows us to get the data in latitude and longitude. And then all this does is it takes the root URL and it adds all of the default parameters on it. So we could have, in fact, it might be easier in your brain at this point, instead of doing all of this, we could have just copied this URL over and put this right here. Okay? But I didn't do it that way. The reason is this is better. Okay? The reason that this is better is it allows us, if we want to, tweak and change things without having to find them in the middle of that huge URL string. And we actually are going to change this because I want to get the interstates rather than the New York City roads. But we'll change that in a second. But we have to change this, and we have to change that to get to the roads. Okay? The interstates. But we'll leave that. We'll set that aside for a second. All right. So this part basically just asks for that data. So it makes a request for this data. It says, okay, give me this data and store it on my computer. So that's what this does. And right now, I'm just console.log to get the to show the feature. That's all I'm doing. But what I want to do is actually add it to the map. So we're going to do two things right now. First, we're going to look at these features coming through just to show you that that works. And then we're going to change this to give us the interstates. And then finally, we're going to actually display those interstates on the map. So we're going to do all of that. So we're basically only going to change this code right here. So the first thing that we're going to do though is look back at this map, but go to the console, so the developer tools. And you notice that there's all these objects. I'm going to refresh it, and all those objects get loaded onto the map. So you've got all those roads. They're getting loaded, and right now they're just getting loaded onto the map. We've got the properties of every single one. Okay, it tells us what borough they're in, when they were created, what type of road it is. So remember in the earthquakes lab, we used these features like the feature description says paved road. We could use that as a color. We could color paved roads gray, and we could color dirt roads brown. I don't know if there are any dirt roads in Manhattan, but let's see. Most of these are probably paved roads. Anyway, but let's say they were all the roads in the United States. You can color them different colors based on that particular parameter. Right? Okay. All right. The first thing, though, I want to do is modify this code. So rather than get just those New York roads that I published earlier, kind of as just to see if it works type thing, I actually want to get the interstates. So let's modify this code. Let's change it. So this needs to be changed to Raber because that's the name of the directory. So when you publish your data, it'll be something else. In fact, if we want to see what it is, we could go down to Raber interstates and just choose JSON P, and it tells us that this is now has to be Raber right there. Okay? The other thing that has to change is the type name needs to be Raber:interstates-Raber right here. We need to copy this thing and put it right here. So now we've changed these two things. File, save. Once we change those two things, I'm also going to change the max features to 2,000. I don't think there's more than 2,000 interstates in the United States, so it should get them all if we say 2,000. And then now I'm going to go back to our little map, hit refresh, and there they are. So we've got all of our features coming in. Let's see what some of the properties are here. The distance, the number, the route number, CG8. There is an Interstate 8. I don't know why it says CG8, but that's just the property of class I, number 805, I805. I don't know what that other one was. So now we have all of these interstates. We haven't added them to the map yet, but we do have them. Here's I-980. Those are all bypass routes or spurs, not main interstate roads. But we have all those interstate routes. So now we want to add them, instead of just logging them out to the log, we want to actually put them on the map. Okay? So let's go back and look at the leaflet help and see if there is see if there's a good way to do that. Okay, let's go to GeoJSON. think there was an example. It might be easier just to copy an example. Using GeoJSON with leaflet. Okay. All right. Ours is most like, oh, that's, okay, ours is probably most like this one. Where we're just going to add them to the map. Let's, I think that there's a default line symbol, so let's hope that there is. So we're just going to append .add to map here. And that'll create a default symbol. We'll worry about changing the symbol later. Okay? Let's do that. So all we're going to do is append on .add to map. But I think this is just going to, let's see what this does. There's already a parenthesis, so it should just be like that. Data on each feature, do that, and add it to the map. I'm pretty sure that this still isn't going to work, but it's just going to add one. Oh, it added them all. Cool. So it added all the interstates to the map, but it just did them as a default feature. Okay? If we wanted to mess with the color or the shape, I'm sorry, the color or the pop-up that comes up, we would have to add something to that default. To that on each feature. So right here, we would have to, I'll write that. In fact, we'll do it here in a second. Add code to make feature, to change symbol or pop-up of features. First, we'll change the pop-up. So I've got this code here that says that we can bind the pop-up. Okay. I'm going to change a little bit because this says feature. We actually need this to say feature, comma, layer. In other words, this function provides a reference to the feature itself and also to the layer as a whole. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Am I recording? Yes. So if I say, I'm also going to comment out this, well, I got to find out what the name, I want it to be like the name of the interstate. So let's go see what that feature is. So if I open up any of these objects and I go under properties and I go to route num, that's what I want. I want it to say I-205. So I want that attribute. So that would be feature dot properties dot route num, and that'll get me so that when I click on any of these locations or any of these interstates, I get that information that's stored in feature dot properties dot route num. That should work. Let's see. Yep, there's I-70. I lived off of I-70 when I was a little kid in Missouri. That's out further west, though. There's St. Louis, the St. Louis area. So there's 70. This should be 64. Nope, 35. Maybe this isn't St. Louis. Am I wrong? No labels on this map. Yeah, that's St. Louis right there. Sorry, that was Kansas City. 44, 55, 64 right there. And then this is 70 coming in. But if we went down to somewhere we're all a little bit more familiar with, right? This is I-10 coming across, or 12 right there, but this is 10 over here. Okay. So we've added in these interstates as features. And one of the advantages is that we can click on them easily and get information about them based on this parameter. If we wanted to add them as WMS, we could. We could still add them as a WMS using the same tools that we talked about the last few weeks. So here's an example of a WMS layer right here. So we could do the same thing. We would just have to put in this URL right here. We just put that URL in here, and then just put the layer would be Raber :interstates -Raber. Format would still be fine. And then we could add that in as a map. All right. So that works. Oh, one thing I want to do is comment out this line, this console line, because it's going to take a few less milliseconds to draw. Let's see how much that improves it. Not a whole lot. Still took a few seconds to draw. So that's a little bit of a drawback when we're drawing so many features. It's a little bit of a drawback to use GeoJSON rather than an image. However, once they're in the browser, they're in the browser. That's the distinction. So when I zoom in on a WMS service, which is a dynamic map service, when I zoom in, it has to make a new request to the server. When I zoom in on these GeoJSON layers, all it does is, as soon as it's done zooming in, it redraws it. It doesn't even make a new request to the server. Okay. So that's an advantage. So it just takes a few seconds on the very first draw, but it's in. And plus the clicking is very responsive. In reality, or not in reality, in practice, which is also reality, but what I meant to say is in practice, somebody just let out like a maniacal laugh up here, but it was in a different classroom, so that's what the pause was about. In practice, a good web map is usually made up of a few different layers that may very likely be different types of layers. One might be a tiled layer as a background or a base map, and we might have a WMS layer. Like in this case, we are using a WMS layer for the weather, because in a WMS layer, as a raster, might as well be a WMS layer because it actually is a raster data set anyway. It's going to have to be displayed as an image. It's fine when we zoom in and zoom out to request a different one each time. And with the weather, it's changing all the time, so it's good that it's a dynamic map service. And then finally, we might have some layers where they're not very complicated vector layers that can draw in a few seconds, that work really well as vector layers, like we have the interstates here, because once they're loaded, we have them, and we can do all sorts of things with them. And so although this isn't a pretty map, it does demonstrate having these 3 layers that are being shown and probably their optimal data type to have them be shown in, or their service type. One is a GeoJSON layer, one is a tiled service, and one is a dynamic service. So hopefully up to this point, because now we've reached the point in this class where we've talked about all the different types. We've shown them in a couple different servers. And so hopefully at this point in the course, you understand when to use a particular when to use a particular type of service. And you also understand that the data, any data can be published and shown in any of these 3 data types. So getting the data and publishing them is one thing that developers of these web apps do. All right. Sorry, show what part of my code? That part? Okay. I'll just leave this up for a few seconds. Yeah, in fact, I'll leave this up for a few seconds. I'll also post this and file save as post class. Save. And I'll also type out what the homework should be today. So the homework today should be to get your own data onto the server using the remote desktop or emailing it to me and saying put it in my directory. But please email it to my regular email. I don't know if it's too large. Like, what if it's bigger than 20 megabytes and you still want to do the email thing? One of the things that you could do is email me a link. Has anybody done Google Drive before or Dropbox? You could store, I think it's 5 gig is the default in Gmail it does. Right. Outlook does too as well. Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, so if it's larger, then do that. However, if you'd like to upload it using remote desktop, go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and create a directory for a login for everybody's last name, but the password will be the same. You can log in as somebody else, steal their data. Just kidding. Yeah, so the assignment is 1, to publish something on GeoServer, and then 2, to modify this code so that it displays in on a leaflet map. And then you'll get A+ points if you actually symbolize it. If you go back to the earthquakes lab and symbolize it using a different, at least 2 different symbols on your map. So I could take this data and symbolize. Let's go back here real quick. Where did I put it? This is not it. Oh, and then the last part of the assignment should be to put something up, to put your map up on the server, the one that you create, the leaflet map that you create. Okay, yeah, it's right here. I took the console.log out, so let me do that real quick. Put this back in. Now, when I refresh, this page. Did I save it? Control S, file save. Huh. It's not, oh, I called it post class, sorry. Underscore post. Okay, so now they'll all show up there, right here. So I might decide to go in here and look at, I could basically color all of the short interstates one color and all the long interstates another color by putting an if statement on the distance miles or the distance kilometers. Another thing I could do is, it looks like most of them are I, meaning interstate, but some of them have a C designation. I'm not sure what that means, but I can symbolize it and say, if the class is equal to I, color it blue. If the class is equal to J, color it green. That's an optional thing. Anybody have any questions about that? I could actually start that if anybody wants me to demonstrate that. I'm going to leave that in for there for a second. So if I was going to actually try to complete that, where I try to have a different color for each, I could go back to the earthquakes lab, let change, marker color is not going to work, but change line color. Let's just see if these are routing lines. I'm trying to see if Google would be, there's somebody that, that's tiles. What you do need to do, so this might help. Okay. So what you do need to do is actually change the style. So inside of the GeoJSON function, you need to change the style based on some parameters. So let's copy this over and see what happens. I'm going to copy just under style and put that in our code. I'll have to change the name of this again. But this is under, you would put this right here, and I have to put a comma here. So it would do the style first. And let's see what this does to our data. I'm gonna rerun. Where is it? There it is. I'll rerun this and see if it does, in fact. Yes, it changes the width of the line to 1, and it changes the color of the line to black. Now this says yellow. Why didn't it change anything to yellow? Right, exactly. But let's say that you upload some polygon data. That might be something that you want to change, is the fill color. So, what this is going to do is return this symbology object. So it goes from here to here. So what we could do is modify this code so that there's an if statement. If the feature is fed in here, if feature.properties.class equals I, then do this, else make it green or blue or whatever color you want. That's what you need to do to fulfill that part of the requirement. I got you started a little bit on that extra part, but you don't really need this fill color part. And the Googling exercise that I just did was trying to find the answer somewhere online. The answer was also on the leaflet help document, as well as in the earthquakes lab that I pointed out. Not the exact answer, but the way to find the answer. All right. Let's see. Any other questions? So I need to type up all those questions, and another thing I'm going to do is do the walkthrough of publishing a tiled map service. That's really all that was totally necessary that I reproduce from last week. So I'll probably be available for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then I'll start talking to myself in my office, doing the video. So if you have a question, email it to me, or call me. I'll leave the thing on. And if not, then you're free to go. I'm going to republish that real quick. Before I do, I'm just going to stop the video part.